Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Peregrine Prude. I'm your rambling host, Colby Matthews. I want to thank my new subscribers and viewers of the videos. Today, we are going to continue looking through C.S. Lewis' wonderful classic, The Four Loves. In the last video, episode 3, part 1, we looked at the introduction of this book, and then we also examined liking and love for things that are subhuman, like appreciation of different things that are on the subhuman level. But today we're going to start looking through chapters 3 and 4 of the Four Loves, and we're actually going to hit upon the first two loves. The first one being affection, and the second one being friendship. The first quote in the affection chapter is, "There is a paradox. It is a need love, but what it needs is to give. It is a gift love, but it needs to be needed." I think I love beautiful paradoxes like this. It is a need love, so it's a love that it needs something from someone else, but what it really needs is to give. There's a symbiotic union there. Likewise, of a gift love, of an overflowing love, that the self is overflowing into others, what it needs is to be needed. And I think a good marriage, even though we're talking about affection here, and not necessarily eros, that's not to say that in a marriage there can't be both. Matter of fact, there should be both affection and eros, and possibly even friendship. And there actually should be all four of the loves manifested within a good proper marriage. But nevertheless, in marriage, you have this wonderful, beautiful symbiotic union, this paradox that you are giving of yourself, but you also need to be given too from the other, and vice versa. And I think sometimes this is a part of love that was very difficult for me to grasp early on, and it took me a while to understand this part. That you always think about love. Love is action, right? Love is a verb, primarily. It is the doing. It is the giving of oneself to others. But there's another part of love, and that's what Lewis calls the need love. And there's nothing wrong with needing love, right? We all need love. We need God's love, and we need the love of other people on varying levels in different kinds of ways. The hard part about need love is that as we receive need love from other people, by them loving us in the way that they should, from a Christian way, in a Christian way, that requires us to change, right? Some people, they just want to be. There's nothing wrong with loving somebody as they are. We should our love for others. It should not be conditional upon that person changing. We should love unconditionally. And that is a virtue. That having been said, that doesn't mean that loving someone doesn't. Love still wants people to change, right? Because nobody's perfect, and love is the great perfecter, right? God disciplines His children. He loves us, and part of that love is a chastening. It's a disciplining. And in the same way, from between human and human, and well, of course, we see that with the parent-child relationship, right? We discipline our children sometimes and in certain ways because we love them. If we never disciplined our children, we don't love them very much. We're not loving them. We're not loving them practically as we should for their benefit down the road. And also in other relationships, even in marriage, in friendship, loving someone, it expects at least a certain level of change, no matter how good the person may be going into the relationship. Nobody's perfect, and while I want to be very clear on this, while love doesn't depend upon a person changing for the better, love should nevertheless expect the beloved to change for the better over time and effort. And that's something that's a lot of people, including myself for many years, I did not really consider. I didn't consider that being loved by another person required me to change, but rightfully so. My wife has changed me a lot, and for the better, and I'm very thankful for that. I've changed her a little bit too, so, you know, tit for tat. Alrighty. But she's changed me a lot more than I've changed her. Just want that to be on the record there. Next quote. Let homely faces stay at home, says Cummins. I guess I didn't know who Cummins was before reading this. Apparently he was was it Roman or Greek? I looked it up. He was a god of antiquity, like a youthful god of the like partying and revelry, basically. And I guess in some old writing, Lewis probably found this. So Lewis quotes it. Let homely faces stay at home, says Cummins. Now affection has a very homely face. So have many of those for whom we feel it. It is no proof of our refinement or perceptiveness that we love them, nor that they love us. What I have called appreciative love is no basic element in affection. It usually needs absence or bereavement to set us praising those to whom only affection binds us. We take them for granted, and this taking for granted, which is an outrage in erotic love, is here right and proper up to a point. Right? We often take for granted those whom we are related to via affectionate love. Family, basically. Right? We all take our parents for granted in a certain sense. Our extended family for granted in a certain sense, and it's only absence or bereavement. Sometimes it takes that for us to really appreciate who that person was or is and what they mean to us. That's not always the case, but it's often the case. I love my parents. I love my family. However, before I went to Korea, I saw them often. I visited them often. We've always kind of lived pretty much in the same county, and I had a healthy appreciation for them. But whenever I went to Korea and lived in Korea for 7 years, it really, even though I called every couple weeks, sometimes I would go a whole month without calling. on some occasions I might have went maybe 2 months without calling, but I tried to be somewhat consistent. But there's nothing like absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? So I really came to appreciate my parents more, especially whenever there was that distance, there was that uh, that absence. Now that I've been back in the USA, living in the same county that they live, and I've been back in the USA for about 6 years now, 6.5 years. I kind of find myself falling back into the old trend of kind of taking them for granted again, like I did before I went to Korea. So, and that's just, I don't know that that's necessarily a wrong thing. It's just kind of, it's a phenomenon that happens. It's just the natural flow of affectionate love, and that doesn't mean that the love is any less. It just takes on a different dynamic, I think, whenever there's proximity versus absence. The especial glory of affection is that it can unite those who most emphatically, even comically, are not. People who, oh, let me restart that. The especial glory of affection is that it can unite those who most emphatically, even comically, are not. People who, if they had not found themselves put down by fate in the same household or community, would have had nothing to do with each other. Growing fond of old so-and-so, at first simply because he happens to be there, I presently began to see that there is something in him after all. The moment when one first says, really meaning it, that though he is not my sort of man, he is a very good man in his own way, is one of liberation. It does not feel like that. We may feel only tolerant and indulgent, but really we have crossed a frontier. That in his own way means that we are getting beyond our own idiosyncrasies, that we are learning to appreciate goodness or intelligence in themselves, not merely goodness or intelligence flavored and served to suit our own palate. I think this, we all have family members that if they weren't family, we wouldn't give a hoot about them, right? We wouldn't give an iota about them. They're not our kind of person. They're not our kind of people. But because they are family, because they are, how's he say it? Because they simply happen to be there in our family and in that kind of social engagement from since we were born, or since they were born, there is affection, and rightfully so. And once you're able to see something in that person that you admire, that you cherish in and of themselves, because they manifest it, and instead of just oh, that's old Uncle so and so, but whenever you start to see something in them that you really appreciate, even though old Uncle so and so may not be somebody you would ever normally associate with if he weren't your Uncle so and so, still that recognition that there's something in him, though it may not be something that draws me to him necessarily, but there's something in him that is worthwhile and virtuous in a sense. So I think that's the beginning of affectionate love, according to Chesterton here. The truly wide taste in reading is that which enables a man to find something for his needs on the sixpenny tray outside any second-hand bookshop. The truly wide taste in humanity will similarly find something to appreciate in the cross-section of humanity whom one has to meet every day. In my experience, it is affection that creates this taste, teaching us first to notice, then to endure, then to smile at, then to enjoy, and finally to appreciate the people who happen to be there. Made for us? Thank God, no. They are themselves odder than you could have believed, and worth far more than we guessed, right? People are odder than you can believe, but worth more than we could guess or imagine. And it's God who gives the worth. And it's often God who inspires the oddity as well. Not always, but it's possible. And I think it's important to. We sometimes fall into the trap whenever we're out and about. We fall into the trap of just engaging with people. We just see people as bodies, right? We see, because people have bodies, right? That's the most obvious aspect of them to the five senses. But as a Christian, I think it's critical. It's critical. It's crucial, right? It's of the cross. It's crucial that we try to experience people as spiritual entities more than just mere bodies. This is something that I struggle with tremendously, especially whenever people are rather annoying and you disagree with them. But may we endeavor to try to, in our everyday dealings with people, whether it be family or just the person in line in front of us at Walmart, may we try to see people as spirits, eternal spirits, right? Everybody is going to exist eternally, one place or another. And may we engage them on that level. May we approach and engage them with that in our minds, with that on the forefront of our minds. Affection opens our eyes to goodness we could not have seen or should not have appreciated without it. The rivalry between all natural loves and the love of God is something a Christian dare not forget. God is the great rival, capital R, rival, the ultimate object of human jealousy. That beauty, terrible as the Gorgons, which may at any moment steal from me, or it seems like stealing to me, my wife's or husband's or daughter's heart. This is something incredibly important to grasp, but incredibly difficult to grasp, and hard. It's hard to will. No love should trump that of my love for God. Now you can have. It's a matter of hierarchy, right? You can love many, many people, many, many things, but God must be the pinnacle, right? Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all of these things shall be added unto you, right? That's the idea here. But too often, yes, we create idols of our love for other people that, put in the proper place under the hierarchy of God. It is ideal. It is wonderful. It is glorious. But if at once our love for another human being is at the same level or above our love for God, then of course it becomes demonic. It becomes idolatry. It becomes an inversion of what should be. A perversion of what should be as well. Are all the unhappy ones unhappy because affection is absent? I believe not. It can be present, causing the unhappiness, right? Um, First of all, happiness is not the goal in life. Right? Glorifying God is the goal in life. Happiness is great. Like it's what I always say. Happiness depends on what's happening, and happiness is purely contextual. It comes and it goes. The joy that comes from God can be abiding. It's like a crimson thread that can weave its way into every context, whether happiness exists or not. However, with affection, people say like what he's saying here. Are we unhappy because we don't have affection? Not necessarily. Affection can be the cause of unhappiness, right? If someone whom we have affection for is going down the wrong path, it's difficult to remain true to your love for that person. You got to be true to your love, and sometimes being true to God and to your love for that person requires you to make for there to be kind of a rupture in the relationship. Hopefully, it's temporary, but sometimes it's not, and that can break your heart. That can break your heart if your child goes, strays, goes away from the fold of God. If your parent strays and goes away from the fold of God, your brother, your sister. I mean, it's sometimes you have that affection, and the love that you have. It breaks your heart for that person to see them go a certain way. All those treacly tunes and saccharine poems in which popular art expresses affection, they are odious because of their falsity. They represent a ready-made recipe for bliss and even for goodness, what is in fact only an opportunity. There is no hint that we shall have to do anything. Only let affection pour over us like a warm shower bath, and all it is implied will be well. Yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for a good love song, right? Especially country love songs. I'm a sucker. I love that. But if you really notice, to a lot of love songs, the kind of language, the kind of ideas they convey. I'm kind of going off topic a little bit here with Lewis' train of thought, but the kind of feelings and worship that these love songs try to bring about, try to induce, they are actually, they should be only applied to God. They are idolatrous because they are saying, oh, I love you, this woman, I love you, but they are idolatrous because you should only, the kind of commitments these love songs make and the words, they're too all in. They are putting the relationship to with a woman or whoever above that for God. They are making it eros kind of the ultimate commitment, the ultimate love, and I don't appreciate that. Sometimes there's a song. What is that song? I don't know. Just next time you hear a love song, some old saccharine, sappy love song, whenever they insert the girl's name or say her or she or whatever, insert that, exchange that for God, and see how much the lyrics actually match up to match up to maybe one of David's old psalms, right? David created love songs for God, but now what's popular is love songs for other people. Not that they're wrong, but sometimes we take it a bit too far. The most unlovable parent or child may be full of such ravenous love, but it works to their own misery and everyone else's. The situation becomes suffocating. If people are already unlovable, a continual demand on their part, as of a right, to be loved, their manifest sense of injury, their reproaches, whether loud and clamorous or merely explicit, in every look and gesture of resentful self-pity, produce in us a sense of guilt. They are intended to do so. For a fault we could not have avoided, and cannot cease to commit. They seal up the very fountain for which they are thirsty. If ever, at some favored moment, any germ of affection for them stirs in us, they demand for more, and still more petrifies us again. And of course, such people always desire the same proof of our love. We are to join their side, to hear and share their grievance against someone else. And all the while they remain unaware of the real road. If you would be loved, be lovable, said Ovid. Right, there is some very, very good messaging here. If you would be loved, endeavor to become as lovable as possible. Now, having said that, there is great virtue and great merit in a person loving the unlovable. Right? God, while we were yet dead in our trespasses, while we were yet sinners, He loved us. Thank God He did. We were unlovable, but He loved us. He redeemed us to a relationship with Himself. And as we are supposed to be imitators of God's love for us, yes, there is great virtue in loving people who are unlovable. But we should not rely on that virtue to be loved, right? We should be trying to meet people at least in the middle. We should try to be as lovable as possible. We can't. Yeah. I think he kind of hits on something here where. Where's it at? And of course, such people always desire the same proof of our love. We are to join their side. Right? We're seeing a lot of that now. If you disagree with somebody, well, that's a microaggression. Or an all-out, or it's violence. Right? If you disagree with somebody. No. They fail, many people fail to grasp that, as St. Thomas Aquinas said, or probably wrote, the greatest kindness one can render to any man consists in leading him from error to truth. That is the greatest kindness. That is the greatest manifestation of love that you can show another person, is leading them from error to truth. The problem is that the person who's on the receiving end of that love, they do not recognize that they are in error. They do not recognize that you are trying to give them the truth. Now, of course, we have to go about this in different ways. We shouldn't be beating them over the head with a stick. Like, I'm loving you, and I mean, we gotta use tact. We gotta allow the Spirit to show us the timing and the way. We need to use wisdom, informed by the Spirit of God within us. All that works together, and it's highly contextual. And it's very, it depends on all the variables involved. But, sometimes just being blunt is the way to go about it. It just depends on the person and the situation. The more intimate the occasion, the less the formalization, but not therefore the less need of courtesy. On the contrary, affection at its best practices a courtesy which is incomparably more subtle, sensitive, and deep than the public kind. In a public ritual, in public a ritual would do. At home you must have the reality which the ritual represented, or else the deafening triumphs of the greatest egoist present. You must really give no kind of preference to yourself. At a party it is enough to conceal the preference. Hence the old proverb, "Come, live with me, and you'll know me." Hence a man's familiar manners first reveal the true value of his company, or party manners. Those who leave their manners behind them when they come home from the dance or the sherry party have no real courtesy even there. They were merely aping those who had. And I got a little confession here. I'm very guilty of what he's railing against here. My wife has often said, "I wish you would treat me with the same courtesy that you treat everybody else outside the house." And that was, oh wow, very convicting, I realized that the eros and the affection that we have here at home, the fact that I can rely on her unconditional love and she can rely on my unconditional love, that had made me a little bit lazy with showing true courtesy to her. Sometimes I get carried away with my tone. I have kind of a tone problem. I've been told that by people who love me, and I really have to, when I'm annoyed or I'm starting to get upset, I have to really level it down. I think sometimes I kind of go up and down with being successful or not successful with that. But that was very convicting, and this is exactly what Lewis is talking about, right there. An example from my own life, where true courtesy, a person's true sense of politeness and courtesy and manners can be seen in the quiet of their homes with how they deal with their own family members. Okay, where's the next one? Here we go. Still dealing with affection. The mere feeling is not enough. You need common sense, that is, reason. You need give and take, that is, you need justice. Continually stimulating mere affection when it fades, and restraining it when it forgets or would defy the art of love. You need decency. There is no disguising the fact that this means goodness, patience, self-denial, humility, and the continual intervention of a far higher sort of love than affection in itself can ever be. That is the whole point. If we try to live by affection alone, affection will go bad on us. Here we see the hierarchy of loves in action here. I like this, right? You need common sense. That is reason. Okay? I've always said that common sense is not that common. I think it used to be. It used to be pretty well common, but it's not that common anymore because we are losing our we're not losing our reason altogether, but we're losing the common foundation, the sense of the common foundation that is God's truth, that from which our reason used to spring and our common sense used to spring. Now our foundations are so scattered and so ruptured and so far flung away from God's truth that we have different lines of reasoning going out like so many different angles into the ether. That's why nobody can really talk to anybody anymore, because nobody can relate to anybody on a fundamental level, a foundational level. You need give and take. That is, you need justice. And that's an interesting way of thinking about justice. Give and take. We often think about justice like a person getting what they deserve. That can be a good desert, or it could be a bad desert, right? Just getting what you deserve. That's how we often think about justice, but Lewis says give and take is justice. Interesting. And he mentions the art of love, right? Loving is an art. Highly art. It's not science. Love is not science. It is every bit an art. And speaking of that, I have a book by Erich Fromm, and it's called The Art of Loving. And that was another one of the books that I read during my heartbreak that I mentioned, kind of led me into this investigation of what love really is. It's what got me on reading The Four Loves by Lewis, and I also read The Art of Loving. That was another one by Erich Fromm. Maybe I'll look into that book at some point during on this channel. It was of erotic love that the Roman poet said, "I love and hate." But other kinds of love admit the same mixture. They carry in them the seeds of hatred. If affection is made the absolute sovereign of a human life, the seeds will germinate. Love, having become a god, becomes a demon. Yes. Love, if it's not in its proper place underneath God in the hierarchy, it becomes a demon. That's exactly what Satan did, right? He thought that he was better than God. He did not want to be in the hierarchy of God's creation anymore. And so he rebelled. He tried to become higher than God, or at least outside of the hierarchy under God. He tried to create his own hierarchy separate from God's. And that is hell. That is evil. That is the demonic. And it's the same principle here. If love attempts to be on the same level or higher than God, or divorce itself from the hierarchy underneath God within his creation, then it becomes demonic. Okay, now we're going to go into friendship, the second of the four loves. This, so to call it, non-natural quality in friendship goes far to explain why it was exalted in ancient and medieval times, and has come to be made light of in our own. The deepest and most permanent thought of those ages was ascetic and world-renouncing. I think it's ascetic. I mispronounced it. The deepest and most permanent thought of those ages was ascetic and world-renouncing. Nature and emotion and the body were feared as dangers to our souls and despised as degradations of our human status. Inevitably, that sort of love was most prized which seemed most independent or even defiant of mere nature. Affection and eros were too obviously connected with our nerves, too obviously shared with the brutes. You could feel these tugging at your guts and fluttering in your diaphragm. But in friendship, in that luminous, tranquil, rational world of relationships freely chosen, you got away from all that. This alone, of all the loves, seemed to raise you to the level of gods or angels. Right? He's saying that friendship, as distinct from affection and eros, it more freely chooses whom it loves. Now remember, like he's referencing the ancient and medieval times. So back in those days, eros, erotic love between a man and a woman, they were arranged marriages were the norm back in those days. And I, kind of going on a little tangent here. I am so glad. I'm so glad that in our country we don't have arranged marriages. Like, that's not the norm. I love my parents, but oh my goodness, had they chosen my wife, nah, no thank you. So I'm very glad that's not the norm in our country. However, I think there's a lot of value in cultures that do still practice arranged marriages. When I was living in Korea, there was an Indian guy that he came to our church, and he came just by himself. He was working in Korea. I believe he was an engineer, if I recall, and he revealed to us one day that he's going to be getting married, and that his parents were finalizing the arrangements with his intended's parents. So it was going to be an arranged marriage. And I asked him, I said that's, it's very interesting. It's very different than how we do it in the States. I said, how do you have you ever met her before? He said that he's met her once or twice. Like, he doesn't really know the woman he's going to be getting married to. He's met her once or twice. And I said, what do you think about this? I know this is I'm trying to understand, like, how are you going into this? And he said I trust my parents, that they have my best interests at heart, and that they will find me a suitable wife, a suitable companion for me. And that's amazing. What a great bond between son and parents, and daughter and parents, that a son and a daughter can trust their parents enough to choose the life mate. I mean, that's amazing. That's really incredible. And I also think cultures that still practice arranged marriages, I think they've honed in on what love is between a husband and a wife, more so than what we have here in the USA, or in the West at large. I'm kind of going off here a little bit. This is more of a talk for the eros aspect of love. But to kind of wrap that up, that they go into it with a commitment that I'm gonna love you. I'm gonna stay with you for the rest of my life. I'm committed to you. I'm gonna actively love you, even though There was no like dating or necessarily courtship as we know it in the West before the marriage. But they go into it and they have real love on their mind. And that is to be with that person until death do them part, and to actively love them. I mean, that's love. Love is the commitment to stay together and to love each other every day within that commitment. I think those cultures that practice arranged marriages, they really got a good sense of what it means to love. But then came Romanticism and tearful comedy and the return to nature and the exaltation of sentiment. And in their train, all that great wallow of emotion which, though often criticized, has lasted ever since. And that's the West. That's the West when it comes to dating. I just don't love him anymore. We're not compatible. Those who cannot conceive friendship as substantive love, but only as a disguise or elaboration of eros, betray the fact that they have never had a friend. The rest of us know that though we can have erotic love and friendship for the same person, yet in some ways nothing is less like a friendship than a love affair. Lovers are always talking to one another about their love. Friends hardly ever talk about their friendship. Lovers are normally face to face, absorbed in each other. Friends, side by side, absorbed in some common interest. Above all, eros, while it lasts, is necessarily between two only. But two, far from being the necessary number for friendship, is not even the best, right? That's the idea behind the more the merrier. That's friendship. The more the merrier is within friendship. Hence, true friendship is the least jealous of loves. Two friends delight to be joined by a third, and three by a fourth, if only the newcomer is qualified to become a real friend. I like how he says, lovers are normally face to face, absorbed in each other. But friendship, you're side by side and you're absorbed in a common interest. That's a theme that he's going to elaborate on further. That friendship doesn't focus on itself. It's focused on like a peace pipe, kind of some kind of talisman that or hobby that the friends all share together. Some sort of appreciative liking or appreciative love or admiration that they have for something else. Maybe that's hunting, maybe that's fishing, maybe that's travel, maybe that's work, maybe that's literature, whatever. Long before history began, we men have got together apart from the women and done things. We had to. And to like doing what must be done is a characteristic that has survival value. We not only had to do the things, but we had to talk about them. We had to plan the hunt and the battle. When they were over, we had to hold a post-mortem and draw conclusions for future use. We liked this even better. We ridiculed or punished the cowards and bunglers. We praised the star performers. We reveled in technicalities. Right? He's kind of hitting on the difference between the genders, between the sexes here. Kind of where some of the differences came from. It's very important sometimes for women to get together with other women and for men to get together with other men. I think that's a healthy practice that, unfortunately, in our society, it's going away. Going back to my days in Korea once again, I would often notice that, whenever men would go out and eat, like, they didn't bring their wives. Like, whenever business groups or groups of friends, they'd all go and they had this big table full of friends, or maybe business associates or co-workers, and they would all be there, and it would be men only, or it would be women only. Now, sometimes it wasn't always the case, but it was often the case, a lot more than what you would see here in the USA. You see mixed groups in the USA almost exclusively. You don't really see a big group of men all at once together, drinking together, or going out for dinner together. Now, just only a few decades ago, though, it wasn't quite like that. It was more like it was more like it is in Korea still, is now. It was like that in the States just maybe 50 years ago, where a lot of the the Elks clubs and the Eagles and all these different fraternities, like fraternity clubs, they were men only. And of course, maybe you might have had a female side club associated with a male club, but they were distinct. And while I'm not advocating for a return to that, I just want to point out that I think that there is a value to that sensibility, that it's good for guys to get together. There is a part of a man that can only come out when he's around only other men. And likewise, there's a part of a woman that can only come out whenever she's around other women. And there's value in that. Continuing off, we reveled in the technicalities. In fact, we talked shop. We enjoyed one another's society greatly. We braves, we hunters, all bound together by shared skill, shared dangers and hardships, esoteric jokes, away from the women and children. Right? Right. It's good to have that sometimes. Kind of going on to a different idea here. This does not necessarily follow from what I quoted earlier, but here we go. This is why those pathetic people who simply want friends can never make any. The very condition of having friends is that we should want something else besides friends. Where the truthful answer to the question, do you see the same truth, would be, I see nothing and I don't care about the truth. I only want a friend. No friendship can arise, though affection, of course, may. There would be nothing for the friendship to be about. A friendship must be about something, even if it were only an enthusiasm for dominoes or white mice. Those who have nothing can share nothing. Those who are going nowhere can have no fellow travelers. When the two people who thus discover that they are on the same secret road are of different sexes, the friendship which arises between them will very easily may pass in the first half hour, into erotic love. Indeed, unless they are physically repulsive to each other, or unless one or both already loves elsewhere, it is almost certain to do so sooner or later. And conversely, erotic love may lead to friendship between the lovers. But this, so far from obliterating the distinction between the two loves, puts it in a clearer light. That's for sure. That's for sure. My wife and I, we started with Eros, but we definitely went in friendship. And I would say we're definitely now we're obviously also in the realm of affection as well. And when it comes to her loving me, she's definitely showing charity. That's the fourth love. Here's a good one. Here's a good one. The little knots of friends who turn their backs on the world are those who really transform it. Right, I can think of 12 specifically, right around maybe Anno Domini 30 through 70 that did just that. I'm talking about the apostles, in case it wasn't clear. All right. For of course, we do not want to know our friends' affairs at all. Friendship, unlike Eros, is uninquisitive. You become a man's friend without knowing or caring whether he is married or single or how he earns his living. We have all these unconcerning things, matters of fact, to do with the real question, do you see the same truth? In a circle of true friends, each man is simply what he is, stands for nothing but himself. No one cares twopence about anyone else's family, profession, class, income, race, or previous history. Of course, you will get to know about most of these in the end, but casually, right? When you enter a friendship, I like how he said this in another previous quote too. Friendship, the core of friendship is the question, do you see the same truth? Now, I'm a fan of the Daily Wire, right? It's a conglomeration. It's a business. It's a conglomeration of different podcasters, politically conservative podcasters. Ben Shapiro's one, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Candace Owens, Jordan Peterson now, and there are some others as well. And every now and then, a group of them, not all of them, but a group of them, they come together for like a round table discussion about about a certain topic that's happening in society, and they talk about it, and I sense their friendship. They have such a respect for one another, and they share this question. They may not share the answer to the question, but they share an appreciation and they share a pursuit of the question, do you see the same truth? And they're trying to pursue truth. And that's friendship. That is the basis of friendship. If, at the outset, we had attended more to him and less to the thing our friendship is about, we should not have come to know or love him so well. You will not find the warrior, the poet, the philosopher, or the Christian by staring in his eyes as if he were your mistress. Better fight beside him, read with him, argue with him, pray with him. Right? That's right. Friendship always has something else as the focus. There's that third party focus. And that focus elsewhere is what actually brings the friends together. Like in a husband and wife relationship, the more they are each focused on God and they become closer and closer to God as the pinnacle of their focus, so the husband and the wife get closer to each other the further they go up in their relationship to God. Likewise, in a friendship relationship, the more focused and the closer two friends get to the focal point of their relationship, of the basis of their relationship, the closer they will get together as friends. It's the going up the sides of the triangle, they get closer to each other as they focus on the pinnacle or the basis of what the relationship is about. Whew, this is a long one. Oh my goodness, but it's so good. It's just so good. It's so good. All right, here we go. Hints. On the one hand, we get the wife as a schoolmarm, the cultivated woman who is always trying to bring her husband up to her level. She drags him to concerts and would like him to learn Morris dancing and invites cultivated people to the house. It often does surprisingly little harm. The middle-aged male has great powers of passive resistance, and if she but knew, of indulgence. Women will have their fads. That's a quote. Women will have their fads. Something much more painful happens when it is the men who are civilized and the women not. And when all the women, and many of the men too, simply refuse to recognize the fact. When this happens, we get a kind of polite, laborious, and pitiful pretense. The women are deemed, as lawyers say, to be full members of the male circle. The fact, in itself not important, that they now smoke and drink like the men seems to simple-minded people a proof that they really are. No stag parties are allowed. Wherever the men meet, the women must come too. The men have learned to live among ideas. They know what discussion, proof, and illustration mean. A woman who has had merely school lessons and has abandoned soon after marriage whatever tinge of culture they gave her, whose reading is the Woman's Magazine and whose general conversation is almost wholly narrative, cannot really enter such a circle. She can be locally and physically present with it in the same room. She can be locally and physically present with it in the same room. What of that? If the men are ruthless, she sits bored and silent through a conversation which means nothing to her. Now, of course, this is a bit dated. Like before, women before many women were as educated as men. Yet there are some good points to be had here, right? I think that it is generally the case that women are more narrative in their argument, in their just everyday speech. Whereas men, we are more focused on like technicalities, like ideas, proof, and illustrations. That's why, whenever, sometimes it happens a lot, whenever a husband and a wife are arguing, a man wants to focus on what brought about the argument. He is laser focused on the one incident at hand that brought it up. Whereas the woman, often is the case, she's bringing in all these different angles that the man has to like just contend with, and he can't pursue any of them with great success, because the woman keeps flinging all these different aspects of where the man has gone wrong at him. And this is an example of that. Women, their minds are more like a web, where they bring in all these different sundry things, whereas into the conversation, whereas a man is more laser focused. He's more like logic. There's more of a logical progression, and he's more focused on the task at hand, the contention at hand. And I think it's what I alluded to earlier, where he says here, right, no stag parties allowed. Wherever the men meet, the women must come too. It's fine if that happens on most occasions. I would advocate for that happening on most occasions. But there is a time for men to meet in their privy chamber, their proverbial privy chamber, and to hang that sign on the doorknob that says no women allowed. There is a time for that, and likewise in the converse, for women to hang that sign on the door and say no men allowed. There's a time for that. Should that be the majority of the times? No, but there's a time. Her presence has thus destroyed the very thing she was brought to share. She can never really enter the circle because the circle ceases to be itself when she enters it. As the horizon ceases to be the horizon when you get there. She may be quite as clever as the men whose evening she has spoiled, or cleverer. But she is not really interested in the same things, nor mistress of the same methods. We all appear as dunces when feigning an interest in things we care nothing about. The presence of such women, thousands strong, helps to account for the modern disparagement of friendship. They are often completely victorious. They banish male companionship and therefore male friendship from whole neighborhoods. In the whole world, they know an endless prattling jolly replaces the intercourse of minds. All the men they meet talk like women while women are present. She does not realize that the husband whom she succeeds in isolating from his own kind will not be very well worth having. She has emasculated him. To discount the voice of a peasant where it really ought to be discounted makes it easier to discount his voice when he cries for justice or mercy. The partial deafness which is noble and necessary encourages the wholesale deafness which is arrogant and inhuman. Right? That's right. It's kind of it's kind of like The Boy Who Cried Wolf a little bit. Not exactly, but just because a person's opinion can rightfully be discounted sometimes doesn't mean that at other times they don't have valid and worthy input on other occasions. I'm trying to think of a good example. I should have had one already. I'm sorry that I don't. Okay. With the whole thing going on with Black Lives Matter and critical race theory, I'm not going to dive into that deep right now, but I'm just using it as an example. Critical race theory is kind of the idea that there is systemic racism from the foundation of Western society, that it has its tentacles in it's systemic. It's everywhere, and it's so systemic that white people don't even recognize it. And the more you don't recognize it, the more you are guilty of perpetuating it. And it's also, it's okay. So I disagree with the foundational assumptions of critical race theory. However, just because I disagree with people who are with just because I disagree with the Black Lives Matter organization, I totally agree that Black Lives Matter, of course, but I disagree with the Black Lives Matter organization because their Marxist underpinnings is very obvious and manifest, and they're a force for disintegration, not integration. They're not really empowering anybody. They're just creating this contention based upon a false premise, I would say. Nevertheless, does that mean that everything that a person who supports Black Lives Matter, everything that a person who supports critical race theory has to say that I should discount? Not at all. They may have some very good points in other domains. They certainly even still have some very good points when it comes to the ways that the ethnic minorities have been treated in the past in the United States. They have very good insights to that. I'm not going to go all the way and agree with them as to their ultimate conclusions. However, there's still a lot of value in what they have to say in certain things. That's kind of an example. I'm sorry it took me so long to kind of get there. That's probably not the best example, but on the fly, there it is. We are almost done with friendship. Friendship is almost finished. One more quote. It is one of the difficult and delightful subtleties of life that we must deeply acknowledge certain things to be serious and yet retain the power and will to treat them often as lightly as a game. And then he quotes, looks like a piece, like a stanza from a poem from Dunbar. Man, please thy Maker, and be merry, and give not for this world a cherry. All right. So today we looked at the first two of the four loves, those being affection and friendship. And next week we will conclude this episode 3 by looking at the second two loves, that being Eros and charity. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and I hope you will join us next week. Thank you for listening. Bye.